Looks like we've got a pretty healthy group here today, which we're really excited about. Thanks for everyone for taking time out of your day to join us here at School of PE. First off, let me just say, I hope that each of you had a wonderful holiday, Thanksgiving holiday with your friends and family. My name, as you can see on the Zoom, is Chris Lamb. And joining me at the School of PE headquarters in Columbus, Ohio, where the temperatures are low and the wind chill is probably even worse. But there in Columbus, Ohio, where we're headquartered, is Chris Miller. Chris is our VP of Learning and Development. And together, Chris and I represent over 200 associates and instructors that have made School of PE a trusted source in the engineering industry for PE and FE exam prep since 2004. Okay, so quick fun fact. We have 4 Chris's that are part of the School of PE family. So you'll hear me refer to Chris Miller as Alpha C, probably the coolest name in corporate America, nickname, by the way, nickname. Since he was the first Chris to join School of PE well over a decade now, way back in 2012. I was just the 3rd Chris to join this super high energy company, so I'm just referred to as C3. But hey, nicknames aside, we genuinely wanted to express our gratitude to each of you for joining us here this afternoon. Today, we're going to jump right into it. We're going to dive into the exam changes that the NCEES announced last month that go into effect April 1st, 2024. So just here at School of PE, our student concierge team is literally 24/7, 365. And they've been getting so many questions about the exam spec or the exam changes coming next April. So Alpha C and I thought, you know, what a better way to help the engineering community than to host this webinar. We hosted a webinar Monday evening in this series, and we had well over 100 people join. And I can tell you it was great. It was so interactive. We had questions. We had a bunch of prepared Q&A, but we ended up taking questions live from the audience in the entire hour. And so we're really encouraging that today. We're happy to answer each and every question. The way we're going to do the question and answer is if everyone looks at the bottom of their Zoom screen, there is a Q&A little icon that is sort of, I would say, to the left of your screen, right next to the chat, right in between the chat and the participants icons. So if you click that Q&A and you put your questions in that Q&A box, we will answer every question. And that will make it the most interactive and make sure that everyone gets their tough questions answered. Because chances are, if you have that question, probably 10 to 15 to 20 other people have that same question. And we found that to be really helpful when we went through this on Monday night. Okay, so last thing I'll say just before we dive in is our goal really here is to demystify the exam changes and help everyone, literally each of you. So please feel free. There's no question that's not worth asking. Please feel free to populate the Q&A with questions at any time. And while we wait for a couple questions, we have a couple to kind of kick things off, just while we wait for some questions to accumulate. But really, again, just our goal is to demystify the exam changes, help everyone, and whether you want to take the exam before the changes go into effect in April or after. So with that, let's just dive right in. And to start us off, Alpha C, can you give us just a quick 2-minute drill type summary of the exam changes that are coming in April 2024, just to help calibrate everyone, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, again, thanks everyone for joining. But before I get going, I just want to also introduce, we have a School of PE instructor who's also a practicing engineer. So Muhammad Algamal's on here with us as well. He's been in the same seats as you, so sometimes he might be better off answering some of these questions. So he'll chime in as well. But just kind of top things off, as you guys probably seen, NCEES released the exam specs in early October. That'll go into effect here April 2024. And just in a nutshell, basically, right now the current format, there's common 8 topics, right, that we call the breadth, everything from project planning to geometrics, hydraulics, and hydrology. So come the April 2024 exam, those will more or less go away. There will no longer be those common topics across all 5 disciplines. The exams will pretty much be unique and pretty much depth specific. And before we kind of conclude that, I'll ask Mohammed, please feel free to, chime in and add anything to that might help shed some light on the, the overview or overview of the changes for
Yeah.
the upcoming exam.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. I thought that was a great description. Primarily, when we look at the specifications for the April, the post-April 1st, 2024 exam, we see that, as Chris alluded to, there was a distillation. So no longer do we have topics that range across the static domains that everyone would be tested on, but rather whatever the examiners deemed relevant to that grouping or to that discipline. So it's not to say that all of them will disappear, but if they're deemed relevant under that umbrella of construction or transportation respectively, then it'll still find its way through. So the first theme of this change, we would say distillation. And then the second theme that I would qualify it as is a rebranding of nomenclature. So the questions will generally be the same in the ones that in some of the categories, and they might title them differently as it refers to the exam specifications. And that's something that I think we'll appreciate when we get closer to studying and evaluating those comparisons from the exam specifications to the practice exam. But I think, the two biggest things, a distillation or a focus within that discipline. So it's not as far reaching, it's not as diverse, and then a rebranding of nomenclature.
Appreciate that, Mohammed.
Yep.
Super helpful. Let me, Alpha, real quick, if it's okay.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, and Mohammed, by the way, when you answer questions, please feel free. You are the most dapper looking of the three of us, for sure. Much far exceeding me. I don't want to speak for Alpha C, but yeah, feel free. If you turn your camera on, then everyone will be able to kind of see you as you're giving your answer. And we've got a bunch of questions in the Q&A specific to, I think, the overview that you and Alpha C just gave. So let's maybe hit a couple of those. This is from Emily C. Great question. Why is the exam changing again when it just changed 2 years ago when it became CBT or computer-based testing? Her question follow-up is like, did the pass rates drop? Chris or Alpha, why don't you, I'm sorry, Alpha or Mohammed, why don't you take that?
Yeah, go ahead, Mohammed, tackle that one if you would.
Yeah, sure. So the change from CBT was an eventual change that was being planned for actually, I believe in 2022. But because of the COVID and the pandemic restrictions, it kind of accelerated the accessibility of the exam. I mean, we still have an outstanding need to backfill the engineers in the workforce. And if we roadblocked the licensure process, it would kind of, we'd see that effect long term. So that was already in the works to be able to scale the exam essentially into CBT. Now, what were the changes from the modality of paper and pencil to CBT? With some of the logistics or the administration, but the exam content was virtually unchanged. Was there another component to that question? Sorry if I missed it, but
yeah, the pass rates.
Okay. In the pass rates, now the pass rates are yes, historically, if we study 20 years or the last 25 years worth of data, we do see trends. And yes, I can perhaps the footnotes, I can probably say they've been more adventurous with the types of questions that they ask. And I think it reflects, or that candidates may be unassuming of that actual difficulty will translate, and we're not doing our diligence as we should be. But generally, on average, we're seeing pass rates, depending on the discipline, they're more concentrated within the discipline, but over the 5 families, we're seeing high 40s, low 50s, all the way to low 70s, I would say. I've even seen it go up to the mid 70s, but I haven't seen that in the last generation of exams. What I do speculate, and this is something that I'm sure we'll talk about later on, what do those pass rates look like in this new modality? And I think that's something that I can expect to see some changes in relative to the cohorts. now relative to the testing group or the cohorts or the candidate group, and not necessarily globally. So I think from candidate, we will see some changes, but overall, they'll probably still fall within those ranges because the exam is very well calibrated. They put a lot of effort into calibrating it, and their psychometric evaluation, if you will. So we should still expect to see that within that range.
Thanks, Mohammed.
Yep.
Appreciate that overview. I think that was a great answer. Alpha, anything you want to add specific to School of PE or anything on top of Mohammed?
Yeah, I think there's a question that's coming up, so I'll address how the study materials will change based on the new exam specs going into April 2024 and beyond.
Yeah, go ahead and take that one.
Yeah, so the question basically is if we decide to take the exam after the change in April, how will the study resources change to match these updates? So when the exam specs came out in early October, I started meeting with the instructors and kind of game planning how we were going to change our course and other resources such as question bank, exam review guides to be ready for the April 2024 and beyond exam. So essentially, we're streamlining the modules so that, as we mentioned earlier, those 8 common topics are gone for the majority of the depths. Water resource, I think, still has about 5 of those breath topics still in their exam specs, but we're updating our course content to be streamlined for each specific PE civil exam. We're working with our instructors and SMEs on our question bank, making sure that questions that are still valid based on the new exam specs and alignment move over into the, get moved over to where then the SMEs will go through and apply the applicable codes and standards and NCS reference handbook to the solutions for those problems. So that's how we're preparing our courses for the upcoming change in 2024.
Great.
Back to you, C3.
Yeah, no, great. Thanks for the answer, Alpha C. So we've tackled 2 questions in the Q&A. We're already off to the same start we had Monday night, which is we don't need to go through our pre-prepared Q&A because we're getting such rich, great questions on the Zoom here. What I'm going to do is take us back to the top just to reward those who put the questions in first. But I want to just pause and say when we started the call, we were roughly at about 75 participants. We're now up to 92, so we've added about 17 since the call started. So just for anyone that joined after we got going, just wanted to again express our gratitude for joining us, especially during the workday. But just on logistics, we're here to answer every question and try to demystify this exam change as much as possible. We're already off to a great start with Mohammed and Alpha's responses to the first 2 questions. If you want to ask a question, there's a Q&A feature at the very bottom of the Zoom. You'll see it kind of towards the left side of your screen, tucked right in between the participants icon and the chat icon. So just click that Q&A icon, type your question in the Q&A, and we have some help from Nikki Jones, who's helping us on the back end. She'll make sure we answer each question. With that being said, I'm going to go back to the top of the list. Our friend Robert Gaffney is asking a really specific question on transportation. It says, specifically regarding the transportation PE, can you elaborate on the exact changes of the test? Mohammed, I'm going to come to you on this one.
Sure.
He's interested in how different, quote unquote, the exam will be compared to the current exam. While we've touched upon some of this, I'm interested in, let's help Robert. Is there anything specific to the transportation depth or the transportation exam that maybe you want to cover further?
Yeah, so what I can offer to, what I can offer in terms of advice also applies to all the other disciplines. So again, even though there's a distillation of topics, so we're not going to have the diverse spectrum, or you might not be assessed on construction in the transportation, you will find that the number of questions associated with the standing topics have increased to make the 80 question threshold. Because one of the things that didn't change is that it's still 80 questions. It's still administered over the course of 8 hours of testing time, excluding your break and the introduction of 10 minutes. And then I would also, I think some of the codes, we saw some changes. So at least for transportation, I know they updated GPF to the 2021 version instead of the 2004 or 2014. I'm misrecalling it, but there were some nominal specification or design standard changes that went along with those specifications. I would encourage you to just instead of trying to maybe tabulate those differences, I mean, this is an eventual change. And I know that there's probably candidates on both sides of the spectrum right now that are either gearing up for it or in the middle of studying. I would encourage you, if that your commitment or your plan or your allotment was to take the exam prior to that change, then commit to it. I don't know necessarily that there's any distinct advantages. I think it comes down to the individual. And that's maybe another question or topic that we can explore a little bit more of. But in terms of the transportation specific, I'm looking at it right now. There's 10 topics. Each of those ranges used to 10 chapters worth of topics. Each of those ranges used to be 4 to 6 or 7 to 9 or 10 to 11. And now each of them, at least, we'll see a lot more density of questions or more questions being asked of those same chapters to make that 80 question threshold, since they've omitted some of those topics. So that's maybe more general. One of the specifics that I can offer you before, at least for transportation, everyone had chapter 1, which was project planning. So when I refer to the nomenclature change, now instead of chapter 1 being referred to as project planning, which had 4 subtopics, it is referred to as project management. And it has 3 topics, but when you look closer at those 3 topics, for anyone looking at the specs right now, they would see that they've consolidated the previous 2 subtopics or subdomains into a singular one. So it used to be quantity takeoff methods, A. B used to be cost estimating. Now A is solely quantity and cost estimating. So they've consolidated. So that's where we see that distillation. They're consolidating their inferences of subject and how it manifests on the specifications. And then when we go to the practice exam, we get that corroboration that, oh, they really didn't change the nature of the questions. They've just rebranded what they want it to represent or what they want candidates to infer that this topic represents. I hope that answers, at least your concern or some of your question, but feel free to ping us back on your follow-up or clarification.
Mohammed, I think that's a incredibly helpful answer. I think it hopefully lends a lot of comfort and calm to those that have the same question. I'm sure there's a bunch of folks that had that same question. And Robert, just to go back to you, really helpful question that could go in a bunch of different directions. Just to echo what Mohammed said, if there's an aspect of your question we didn't answer, and this really goes for anyone, if we kind of go through your question and don't fully answer it, or there's an aspect you want us to go further on, please just put it back in the Q&A, and we'll get to it as well. Okay, Alpha and Mohammed, let's go to the next question.
Sure.
What will be the difference between the new PE Civil Structural exam and the SE exam now that the PE won't have the breadth section? So really good, very similar question, different depth topic, if you will. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Yeah, I very briefly, from my limited knowledge or exposure, the PE exam is one of the requirements, or the principles and practice of engineering exam is one of the minimum requirements for licensure to gain the PE licensure, or the professional engineering licensure, while the SE represents an entirely different track. Regardless of the omission of the breadth, to qualify these two or to distinguish these two, they will still remain on separate tracks because they serve 2 different functions in the professional space. They may converge perhaps a little bit, or they may be reminiscent of one another, or at least the PE now resembles this SE in some category because there's not the diversity of topic, but certainly the topics that are assessed in the SE are unique in its specification due to the fact that it's its own track. Chris, anything from your side, at least from those instructors, the feedback that you've received in terms of maybe the comparison? I don't know if there's anything else to add to that.
No, it's good. I mean, you're right. They're going to maintain the same different paths because they achieve different goals, right? The SC exam, or what's now called the PE structural exam, vertical or lateral, is just a much more in-depth exam into some of the topics that, you're going to see on the PE civil structural exam, but you're going to go a lot deeper because it accompanies a different goal.
Okay, great responses there, Mikhail. I hope that was helpful. Again, That was pretty in-depth, but if we missed anything, please feel free to put that back in the Q&A. And Mohammed, if anyone else is like me, I'm sort of camera shy sometimes as well, but given and just for full transparency, Monday when we did the webinar, it was me and Alpha C. Mohammed was actually teaching one of our courses, and so he wasn't able to join us. But Mohammed, just given that you're answering just with such rich responses, please feel free to turn your camera on.
Yeah,
I'm
relocating. I'm relocating out of my home office at the moment.
No
so
sweat.
as soon as I get situated, I will do.
Oh, dude, the content's way more important. But again, you're the most dapper of the field. So the webinar will go up in popularity as soon as you join. I'm sure.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I appreciate
All
it.
right, awesome. Well, thanks, Mohammed. Okay, let's go to the next question. Again, just kind of going in order. This is another good one. This, Alpha, I think you're best to take this one. But if someone is currently planning to take the exam before the change, meaning before April 1st, and then has to retake the exam with the changes, if they are strong with the depth portion, it sounds like it might be in a tester's favor. The way I'm interpreting that, Alpha, may be a little bit different than yours. So please feel free to take that one.
Yeah, no. So basically, right, you have the four common topics that make up 40 or 50% of the exam, right? 40 points the breadth. So if you take the exam under the current format and do not pass the exam, but you happen to score higher or stronger on the depth topics, is it going to favor you come April and beyond, right? On the surface, I'd say yeah, right? Because those topics that, geometrics, project planning are going to be gone, right? So there'll be more weight applied to the depth because there'll be more questions for each depth topic. So on the surface, I'd say yes. Mohammed, please feel free to add into that if you like.
Yeah, a loaded question.
Yeah.
I think we also have to say that the breadth, it's probably more important that the breadth comes out of a disadvantage for you in the current exam for you to benefit from it downstream.
Correct.
If the breadth,
My bad. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Yeah. So candidates, maybe this is something that I've been kind of dancing around in some of my questions, but candidates that are closer to their milestone of graduation, perhaps and FE experience or testing environment, are going to see those topics and have some familiarity. They're going to have some association and they're going to have some comfort with those questions. So if we believe that we test better with those questions, there could be an opportunity in trying to take this examination, but not synthetically, right? If we're not going to do it correctly, I would suggest then abort and plan appropriately, because you still need that window and that commitment and that dedicated time and effort. So all this to say, if the breadth categories and the diversity of topics is something that gives us some level of anxiety or discomfort, then maybe it's better suited for the newer version as opposed to the legacy version.
Yeah, and I think the depends aspect of that is we just don't know, 100%, and every individual case is a little bit different, Mohammed, too. So I think I think Mohammed's answer is perfect in terms of the grace that we recommend. But this next question is along the same lines, and while it's not specific to breadth or depth, it's if we are just now starting to make a study plan, do you suggest holding off until April to take the test and hunkering down on the new curriculum? The short answer here is that actually is not our recommendation. And we have a course offering that Alpha C will go through, a boot camp offering that will help you, even if you've just barely started to plan out your studying, that will help you get ready for the exam pre-exam spec change. And the reason I think this dovetails well off of Mohammed's response to the last question is it does really depend, I think, on your comfort level with the depth versus the breadth. And I think that's kind of where we're at as School of PE. Alpha, you can elaborate on that and say it much more eloquently than me. But a lot of it does come down to yourself best. Generally, if you're going to be a rock star at the breadth questions, then certainly emphasize, the boot camp option that Alpha will talk about is here to help you get ready, even if you've just started preparing. Chris, why don't you take it from there?
Yeah, sure. No. So, I've talked to several students over the last, couple of months or well, almost a little over a month now. And, I tell them if you started the path down to start preparing for the exam before the April 2024 change, stick to the course, stick to that path, prepare with the assumption that, hey, you're going to be done come the April 2024 exam. We do, understand like when the exam specs came out, we already had a live online class scheduled for a November start date, and not everybody was ready to make that commitment, right? To be like, hey, I'm going to be ready for November. So we're having a boot camp starting February the 5th that'll prepare you for the exam prior to the April 2024. It gives you guys an opportunity, if you're still looking for some kind of live instruction format class, to be able to participate. A couple of things we've done different. It is a boot camp, so it's going to be condensed. It's going to be shorter in duration as far as the breadth is 2 weeks versus 4, and the depth is 2 versus 4. But we have integrated instructor-led study sessions. So after the completion of the breadth topics, there will be 1 week of live instructor-led study sessions where you can go through some workshop problems, ask questions of the instructors that maybe you need some clarity on. And the same thing will happen at the conclusion of the depth course as well. You'll have a 1 week worth of study sessions. And I was talking to Mohammed, I believe yesterday, and he was also saying, hey, students are asking during the live class too. And he has a great response. I'll let him chime in and kind of explain or share how he's been, educating those that have asked the questions, even during the classes that are ongoing now.
Yeah, my general and default rule, if we're talking about a classroom environment where we always have a diverse gathering of individuals of different levels of tenure across different industries, is commit to the plan that you set forth. Now, that's not to say if you ask me offline and I have a little bit of more downloaded data of what kind of candidate you are, what's your experience, what's your exposure, what's your educational background, your comforts, could I give you some more strategic advice? Absolutely. And I think I welcome those conversations. If you're in a predicament and you want to outline, some of the specifics and you'd like some guidance on what to do, or should I try to rush it? Now I have an opportunity. I have a captive window. My life is kind of static at the moment. I'm ready for a challenge. Or is it best that I wait to push it off? One of the statistics, I just want to be able to highlight why this is an important conversation, depending on your cohort and the years of experience post-graduation, is that one of the statistics that we've been able to glean from the data that's aggregated from Ncees is that contrary, and this leads into one of the questions that I saw in the chat, but contrary to our association of the exam, of it being this professional hallmark, which it is, and what it represents of reaching this, this certain pedigree of technical competency and confidence and regard to be able to do things in practice, whether that's seal drawings and issue designs and be the competent individual. We do see a inverse corollary between what the exam represents and in practice, because the statistics say that individuals that stay longer in industry have statistically less odds of passing the exam relative to the counterparts that are leading up to the 4-year mark, because the exam, as defined by the examiners, is designed for professionals who have gained a minimum of 4 years post-college work in their chosen discipline. So
Yeah.
we have to think about it from that perspective. It is curated for that candidate. And that's why we see, maybe it's a confirmation bias, but we see the highest pass rates at that 4-year group. Are we going to see the highest pass rates in the new exam at that 4-year group in the next generation? It might teeter off. It might not. It might plateau from the 4 to the 10-year. That's what I'm speculating now, but we'll see how dramatic those questions do end up reverberating with those respective cohorts.
Yeah, Mohammed, I think that's really helpful data. I can visually picture the chart, and you're welcome to share it in the screen share if you have it there on your laptop. It's a really powerful chart. I think it speaks to, let's do two things. I think it speaks to, obviously there's, in the total universe of exam takers, there are more people that do not take an exam prep course like those that we offer at School of PE than do. And so when we talk about those pass rates, I just think we should look at them in terms of that frame of reference as well. And Alpha C, if I could, thanks for acknowledging that, Mohammed. If I could ask you to sort of elaborate on two things. One is, it's talk about School of PE's pass rates in general and kind of what leads to the, the higher than the national average pass rates. Let's maybe cover that really briefly just to give folks a level of comfort of like, hey, you're in the right spot right now, getting the best information you can. And I think, why don't you take that one? And then the other thing is speak to Mohammed. I think what I was thinking as you were saying that question is really what, like all these questions in the chat, the theme that I'm reading is my decision to take the exam pre or post the exam spec change is dependent really on two things. One, my individual level of comfort with the breadth versus the depth. But two, really the question of what resources does School of PE have for those people that want to take it before the spec change versus after the spec change? So Alpha, I think it's a really good point in the webinar to pivot to let's address those two. Those were the biggest topics that we covered on Monday night, and I think we've spoken on some more specifics more so today. But let's kind of maybe come back, and Alpha, if you can talk about those two things: pass rates and then resources available, and then we'll get back into the chat.
Sure, no. So, School of PE for across the board, our pass rate's a little over 90%, about 93% compared to the national average was about 60-some%. But if you think about it, those also include some School of PE students as well. So the national average for, exam takers would actually be lower than that. But, what makes us so successful and our students so successful is our instructors, right? We don't have one person teaching an entire class. We have multiple instructors teaching it. So someone, let's take a transportation engineer, for example. They might be good at all the subjects on there, but being good and knowledgeable versus teaching somebody's totally different, right? So that's why you'll see like our breadth is covered by 4 different instructors. Sometimes the depth's covered by 1 or 2. So we give you an instructor that is a specialist in that area. And that's what makes the students so successful when it comes exam time. As far as resources, for those of you that are maybe currently enrolled in a course with School of PE that you think you're taking your exam prior to April 2024, and then maybe you end up deciding to take it after 2024, the material's still relevant. Maybe there's some modules that you don't need to pay attention to if you're going April 2024 versus now, but the content is there. So we have an on-demand course that you can take that'll prepare you for the exam prior to April 2024. Our live online classes for those of you who want to take it post-April 2024 start in February. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we do have a boot camp that starts February the 5th. That gives you one last chance at live instruction prior to the exam change in 2024. Just to kind of let everyone know too, our question bank, we're updating for the 2024. That should be ready by mid-February. We currently have practice exam booklets available, and those will be updated for April 2024 and beyond, probably come February or March.
Okay, that was a lot of information. Great job, Alpha and Mohammed. You rattled off a lot of different things in the resources. I want to let the audience reassure you're going to get a follow-up email. Anyone that registered for the webinar, which you had to do to attend. So everyone on this webinar, you'll get a follow-up email that will summarize what Chris just said. For the course options available, as well as the timing and release of those materials for post. And then Alpha, can you just speak to what I heard you say really clearly was, hey, if you want to take the exam before the change, we're going to have, we have this set of resources available. If you want to wait and take the plan to take the exam after the change, our next live online classes start in mid-February. So boot camp for those that want to take it before, February live online classes that start in February for anyone that wants to take it after. But could you address, I think what is probably the biggest population, which is, hey, I want to take the exam before the spec change, but I want to start studying right now. And so can you just talk about if you register for that boot camp, you get immediate access to the on-demand, maybe just elaborate on that, and then we'll get back into the Q&A.
Yeah, so there's 2 different ways, right? You can approach the pre-exam change as far as preparation. So the boot camp, yes, it comes with immediate access to the on-demand, which you're going to want to go through and kind of prepare yourself, go through the topics. That way, when you come start February 5th of the live online classes, you've had an opportunity to go through some of those modules that might be some of your weaker areas. So that way, those topics aren't new to you come February the 5th. But also the on-demand course is already there, right? So you can register for the on-demand course if you're somebody that doesn't need the live instruction, or maybe you need a little more flexibility in study time. The on-demand course is always readily available as well. One of the nice things about the on-demand course is you can still send questions to instructors, right? So you're not on an island by yourself. If you're going through the modules, you have questions, you could submit to an instructor and they'll respond to your questions and clarifications.
Great. Terrific, Chris. Again, everyone will get the summary of kind of the availability. And quite honestly, I think what's really rich and valuable that we learned from Monday was people are looking for a guide. Okay, if I'm going to start preparing now, but I don't want to take the exam till after April 2024. Again, I want to say that's not quite our recommended course if you've already started studying. We really do recommend you stay the course, plan to take the exam before the change. But for anybody that does want to do that, study now, assuming they're going to take it after the exam change. Chris Miller is going to lay out sort of, here's what's in the current on-demand class that you would sort of not need versus where you want to emphasize your focus on. So I think that's really important to emphasize. We've got something, no matter what your preference is, no matter what you feel like you want to do. Okay, so here's where we're at. We've got about 20 plus, a little over 20 minutes left. We've got 10 questions in the Q&A. So the simple math is about 2 minutes per question if we want to get to everyone's question. And we want to be respectful, especially because it's during the day, the work day. We want to be respectful. We'll end the call on time. But Alpha and Mohammed, let's do this. We'll go through the questions. Let's plan our answers around 2 minutes. And if we don't quite cover everything, I'm sure that people will put it back in the chat. But let's just try to get to every question. And to do that, we'll kind of abbreviate our answers just a tad. Okay. This next one, how did you come to the conclusion that there are still some water-based questions? Does this apply only to a depth covered in water?
No, the hydraulics and hydrology section is still there for the geotechnical examinees, and then of course for the water, but there is still the hydraulics and hydrology for the geotech examinees.
And we still see water topics in the other sections as well. They just might be called something else. So we have hydraulics and hydrology in construction. For geotechnical, we have groundwater and seepage. In that related sphere, I don't know if what water is referring to, but the qualifier for what makes it into the specs is if the examiners deemed it relevant to the discipline in practice. So for practices that are more diverse, like construction, you will see a multitude of topics, or at least some variation of 4 or 5 of the original topics. Where when you go to something like structural, it's going to be 90% structural. So that's
Thanks,
just
Mohammed.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep, you got it. Okay. Should we, the general question, should we expect the questions to be more technical or challenging, or just more questions in each category? We addressed this a little earlier on, but Mohammed, please feel free.
Yeah, I would say more questions, technical intensity, it wouldn't exceed what we currently see. I think it's just going to be distilled more questions on average.
Yeah, I think that's my read as well. Just more questions in each category as opposed to like more challenging. Okay, all right, good job, guys. We're cruising here. Brendan, also, I read this question and immediately was like, all right, this is a good one. The new reference manual on the Ncees website for the new curriculum seems significantly smaller than the old one and very vague, especially for PE civil structural. Are we expected to know more on the new exam just as quote unquote common knowledge to make up for those lost references?
Are we talking about the reference handbook? And Chris, to my knowledge, no, it wasn't significant, at least from 1.2 to 2.0. I don't know. Did you see something alternatively?
Yeah, I was surprised at the release at 2.0. I was expecting a much more in-depth handbook than what's out there, but not like much smaller. But I will say the other part of that question was like, hey, is that structural knowledge just supposed to be common knowledge? I was actually speaking to a couple of our structural engineer or instructors last week, and they're going to take some of that breadth material that was underneath the structural mechanics section, and they're going to integrate that into the portions of our depth class, because you still need, or not depth class, but new course for April 2024 and beyond, because you still need some of that foundation knowledge to be able to address some of those questions that you're going to come across on the new exam format.
And as a standing reminder, if one of the things that we do realize is the reference handbook could be lacking in some subject areas. What takes precedent, or what tells us is going to be on the exam, is the exam specifications first. Secondarily, the practice exam. The reference handbook is not an indication, maybe on a tertiary or an implicit basis, what could appear. But if they would like to test us on it, they could include it in the question itself and ask us to employ it. So it's not necessarily supposed to be this this comprehensive compendium as we were used to in the previous generations. And I think they'll get better with
Okay.
time. They're just going through transitions. So
Right. And a couple of things to take note of too, when you're looking through the handbook, I mean, you're going to see, mechanics of materials section that you're going to, that's going to help you with the structural portion. So there are some, I guess you're going to call it common engineering knowledge that you're going to need to apply for the latter part of what is considered the depth for the structure. So back to you, C3.
Okay. All right, great answers. Okay, here we go from anonymous participant. I'm taking the transportation test. I don't see structures on the specifications. If I need to retake the test in April, should I even bother studying structures?
no.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay, always good when we can have a little humor. Hopefully that's maybe the shortest answer we've given, but the most clear. Okay, terrific. Next one. Are you receiving these changes and specifications directly from Ncees? Because reading the Ncees changes online doesn't fall in line with what Mohammed is stating. Okay, we might need some more clarity to that in terms of what Mohammed said that you feel like is maybe off of what the Ncees website is saying online. That's from an anonymous participant, so unfortunately, hope that person's still here.
Maybe
Mohammed,
they're looking
anything
at,
you want to say?
yeah, maybe they're looking at because both specifications are live right now. Maybe they're looking at the older specifications. I'm not too certain, but
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's do this. Go ahead, Alpha.
I was going to say, if that person would please just put a little more detail into the Q&A, then we can address and hopefully clarify what they're referring to.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% endorse that. In the meantime, we're going to move on if that's okay. Will the School of PE class be more in-depth for each chapter? And can we expect a lot more specific questions? So again, a good flavor. We've answered some of this. Alpha, I think this is best for you.
Yeah, sure. So currently our PE civil classes run about 96 hours total. It's usually is about 48 hours for the breadth and about 48 to 52 for the depth, depending on which depth. So the number of hours is not going to change. Like just because the breadth is gone, we're not cutting our course down to 50 hours. I believe structures is scheduled to be about 78 hours. I think construction is still around maybe the 92. So the number of hours will still pretty much remain constant because, yeah, you're going to need to spend more time on the subjects that are remaining. There are going to be additional workshop problems integrated into the course as well. And I'll let Mohammed add anything in there if he likes.
Yeah, no, I thought that was, if they rebranded it and it still falls under a smaller umbrella, it's still an umbrella that we have to cover, at least in the nomenclature. So to cover those topics, we still have to go through it. So yeah, I don't see much change in terms of the hour commitment. Maybe in terms of how which bucket it falls into, that might be a different story.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to break my own rule and skip ahead just a few. This is more of a statement than a question, but I thought it was timely. Michaela Butler, just you have no idea how this really warms our heart here, but it says, I'm in my second week of School of PE and in the class with Mohammed this week. Just wanted to say that he has been great, as well as the professor I had for my first week. Highly recommend taking the course to help with studying. So, Michaela, what I love about doing these webinars is just being able to connect with the people that are, I'll just say this in 5 seconds, but we at School of PE are just so, one, grateful, but two, really just proud of everyone, not just that's here on the webinar, but really just you're launching yourself on a journey that is going to vault your career forward. This is a scary exam. These changes are super difficult to digest and understand. We're just really proud of everyone, for trusting us on this journey and for being on this journey. It just takes a lot of courage. And so when we read comments like that, Michaela, we just really appreciate it. I'm going to go back to the questions now that Mohammed's head won't fit on the screen. This is a more tactical question on product availability. So Alpha, when would practice exams start becoming available for the new format?
So I would say probably towards the latter part of February, early March. The question bank will be updated by mid-February, and then that's how we generate the questions for the question booklets that we print and make available ebook.
Speak to that a little bit of the question bank, though, because it's not like the question bank, if you want to take the exam post-April, is not useful to you today. Can you please speak to that in terms of like just getting going?
Right, so covered that a little bit earlier, but I'll
Yeah.
kind of rehash it. So the question bank, is valid whether you're taking the exam today versus you're taking it in June, right? That what we're doing is making sure those apply still moving forward, but also we are adding the applicable codes and standard references along with the NCS references from version 2.0 to the solutions.
Perfect. Okay, great. I'm going to acknowledge this question, but I think we answered this. So Alpha and Mohammed, if you agree, this question was asked. It says, could we just talk in general about what the new changes are for people that don't, I'm sorry, hold on a second. Could we just talk in general about what the new changes are for people that don't really know much about it at this point? I'm going to say we tried to address that about midway through. Alpha, do you want to, in 10 seconds, try to recapitulate that? But hopefully we address this one.
Right, or easier is if you have, if anyone has questions or need more information on some of the questions we covered, just send an email to info at schoolofpe.com, and we're happy to respond. And again, if I don't know the answer, I'll send it to Mohammed, and he'll be able to respond. But basically, it's just a new exam alignment, basically, right? I mean, some of the topics you might see, and then if you read the sub bullets, they're the same as was there previously. It's just as Mohammed said, the nomenclature should change. The breadth topics are essentially gone, except for I think WRE exam is the one that has the most carryover from the breadth topics, but even one of them, I think it's called a site excavation, is on the WRE new exam specs. But if you look at it, it's basically site development, which is currently a breadth topic. But again, if you guys have questions that we didn't answer and need more details, just please send an email to info@schoolofpe.com.
By the way, I just want to emphasize that is not a black box by any means. We man that email inbox. It goes to multiple people, including myself, at School of PE, and we have multiple people that monitor that box, and we respond to every single one. So it's just easier to give one email address to everyone on this webinar. Okay, we're doing great. Let's keep going. We've got about 10 minutes left. Mohammed, will the new license rule affect the previous PE license?
What new license rule?
Well,
I would just ask for clarification on
that. If we could ask for clarity on this question. Let me go to the bottom. Nope. Okay. Yeah, if you could add a little bit more clarity from the person that asked that question, will the new license rule affect the previous PE license? That would be super helpful.
So just generally jurisdiction on a state basis, every state has requirements, and this exam happens to be a requirement and not the only requirement. And so they've kind of compartmentalized the licensure acquisition from the exam taking. Before, it used to be successive, and now it's just once you acquire this, bring it back to the state and present your whole package. So generally speaking, but if you need any help with putting your application together or asking follow-up questions, please reach out.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to go quickly here. Does the on-demand access start from the purchase date? Alpha, this is for you. Does the on-demand access start from the purchase date, or can you choose when to start? Can you buy the on-demand now with the Cyber Thursday sale, but not start until the new material is out? Good question. I just want whoever asked this, it's anonymous, but we got the same question the other night. Alpha, you want to take this one, please?
Yeah, so I am hoping to have the new on-demand course ready by mid-January. But let's say you purchase today because the cyber is out there. If you can purchase it, the on-demand access begins the day you actually purchase it. But once you purchase the course, send an email to info@schoolofp.com or call us. Student Services will pause your course until you're ready to begin preparing for your exam. This way you can take advantage of the pricing and the offers that are on the website currently.
Really helpful, Chris. Good job. Okay, Mohammed, I see you're addressing the license question in the chat, so I'm not going to go back to that one just yet, unless you want to.
No, we can continue.
Okay, let's continue on then. Okay. Can students register for a School of PE class? Okay, this is a different question. Similar answer, but let me read the full question to acknowledge it. Can students register for a School of PE class and start participating for the April exam now? Do you have an on-demand class which will offer exams that will be updated in February, March, as Mr. Miller indicated?
Yeah, I'll tackle that one. So even if you registered today and start preparing for the April exam, reach out to me and let me know what depth you are, and we can guide you to which modules that you can avoid. Like for example, if you're transportation, you're taking it post April 2024, then you can avoid structural mechanics. But yeah, you can register for the on-demand course today, start preparing, and we can help you, avoid the modules that you're not going to need for the exam beyond 2020 or April 2024.
Great answer. Okay. I like this question a lot. It states, obviously not taking the exam to fail, but if I intend to take PE for current exam, but fail before April, will I be able to get the free repeat or take advantage of the pass guarantee for the newly exam prep with School of PE that will be for after April 2024? Really, really good question. Alpha, go ahead.
Easy answer is not that you're going to need this anyways, because you're going to pass
You're
the
not,
first
you're
go
gonna
around.
pass. Yeah.
But to give you that safety net, absolutely. If you do not pass the exam, you can get a free repeat. That'll prepare you for the exam post April 2024. And then I know there was a question from a TxDOT employee that we had seen. I think Nikki took care of it, but I'll address it really quick. We are conducting, classes for Texas DOT, and I believe you guys have a class that starts in early January that will be based on the April 2024 and beyond. But also reach out to Michelle and Brittany because I've discussed some options with them as well that they might be able to share with anyone that's in here from Texas DOT.
Maybe, yeah, sorry, let me just endorse that. If you need Michelle and Brittany's
You're welcome.
contact information, we have that. Okay, does that work for a Texas DOT employee on demand? Oh, yeah, so Alpha, just the,
Does that work? So
maybe
yeah,
does that
so
work?
I think for Texas DOT, you have like an EPC 102 and an EPC 103. The 102 is the breath. I think what they're doing this time around is you guys will have access to the on-demand course, and then everyone will get their respective depth, I believe. But reach out to me at info@schoolofp.com, and I can give you a more detailed answer.
Okay. We actually did a great job clearing through the Q&A. I want to check the chat and make sure. I think it's mostly been our great team at School of PE posting information in the chat. And you, Mohammed, is, yep. Okay, so we're no questions in the chat. Follow-up question here, Alpha. So that means I can buy the February live online exam prep course, start preparing using on-demand, and in case I fail before April, that entails me to both live and on-demand version of the new one.
That is correct. Again, not that you're going to need it, but yes, that is correct. You can, if you do not pass the exam, you can come back and take the live online on demand for post April 2024.
I wanted to add just a very quick note on just pass rates and likelihood. I think it's so important to just position yourself for the mindset that you're going to invest and leave it all on the table. I think using and being in the privileged space that is a School of PE instruction portal or world is makes all the difference. And I say that not as an instructor selling it, but I say that as a former student that believes in the process. So I think, if we just have to, recognize that this is going to require a concentrated sacrifice or a contiguous amount of time. And if we can allot that either now or later, it's just important that we get it. And I think the analogy that I tend to try to use, if you ever think about pulling a deadlift, your best odds of getting that bar clean up is that first time. And we just want to make sure we leave it all on the table that first time around. And if we happen to be in the circumstance where it's not our first time and we just need a little bit of encouragement, I so encourage, and implore you to reach out so we can have those one-on-one conversations and we can get you back on track to get your goals. But I wish you all the best of luck.
I'll leave it at that. Well said, Mohammed. I think that's hopefully what comes across. Alpha, I'll let you wrap us up if there's anything specific. We're obviously getting a lot of questions on. To me, the questions kind of bucket into: should I take the exam before or after the April 1st, and then based on how I feel there, what materials are available? So I'm gonna ask just again for anyone that joined late, or just to recap it again, which we will put in email for everyone, but just take those two questions, maybe recap our responses. And then we just, again, this is the last thing I'll say, really appreciate everyone's time today. And again, applaud the effort that each of you are going through to get your license. But Alpha, do you want to kind of recap us on those two topics? Those are the most frequently asked.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to, I think Mohammed and I both kind of endorse this. If you're started the journey now to take the exam before April 2024, don't get sidetracked by looking at the new exam specs and thinking or planning to see that maybe you should wait. If you've already started preparing and invested the time, then continue the course and prepare and take that exam as planned. If you're on the fence and you haven't started preparing and maybe you've taken the exam previously and the breadth was not a good outcome for you and the depth was really good for you, then sit it out and wait till April 2024 and beyond, because then that section's gone, right? You don't have to worry about those compiling your 40 points. But that is my 2 cents. And Mohammed, please feel free to add in.
That was perfect, man.
All right. So, I mean, there is one other question that, I would love to address that was just posted out there. C3, if you want to start the question, I'm happy to chime
sure. In. No problem. And thank you so much for asking this. This is, look, if it's one thing that hopefully everyone is maybe learning about us and the people kind of behind School of PE. We're human, just like all of y'all, and we're really transparent. And so hopefully that's coming across. You're meeting, the faces of three of the people that are here to help you the most, and along with all of our other instructors. This question, I love it, and let's tackle it head on. It says Reddit has created some confusion on EET versus SOP. On me, I think you mean School of PE versus EET. There are some bad insights on SOP, but EET being more helpful. What's your perspective on that? I know that would be biased anyways. Yeah, thank you for that last portion. Alpha, please feel free.
Yeah, I mean, we'll tackle it right on. I mean, everyone posts their own thoughts and comments, whether they're good or bad. They're out there, right? And they're going to be out there for EET. They're going to be out there for PPI. But I can assure you this, when it comes to our courses, our materials, they are constantly evaluated based on student feedback. So I'd love to know what kind of comments are out there, what your experience has been with the School of PE product. I meet with the instructors regularly. They see the student feedback, and that's how our course gets better, based on the feedback from the students. And so we are constantly, improving our materials, but, everyone's going to have their own insight on what's better and what's not. I'd love some more details. Mohammed, if you want anything, please feel free.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And I think just like anything, it's very easy to have a jaded or positive experience that ends up you inherit for yourself. I think it's the responsibility of every candidate to make the experience their own. When I was on my journey of trying to find out how I was going to pass my module, and I looked to the candidates next to me and I said, "What do you think? I'm taking the construction." They were like, "Man, this is my 4th time taking it. It's a really hard one." And I'm just like, "Oh my God, like that's it. I'm doomed." And this is coming, this is inside of a School of PE class, years ago. So the problem that I made is I ascribed their lack of diligence at that time with my own lack of diligence, which wasn't, I didn't have that ability to disassociate and say that actually I'm doing a lot of things differently and I'm having a much more positive process. So just making the realization that this is an individual journey, and yes, the statistics I think prove themselves, and the proof is there. So I think just going there with an open mind, and regardless of how you go about this, I think it really comes down to the individual. And I think what we offer at School of PE as from the instructor perspective, I think the testament is there. So I'd encourage you, at least if you need some insight, if you'd like a demo of some sorts, I'm sure that's something that Chris could certainly arrange for, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I think that's a great.
I just want one last thing is, like, it is ultimately your decision whether you take a course with School of PE, you study on your own, you take EET or PPI, right? Reviews drive our decisions, right? I mean, you go places you choose to eat based on reviews that you get off of restaurants. But what makes us unique is our instructors, right? The passion that they have for helping students prepare for and pass their FE or their PE is unsurmountable. There's no one in the business that does that. And that's what makes our difference. Our instructors will talk to you on the phone and answer questions that you may have. Which depth should you go? Which way should you go? They're there to help you out. So again, it's your decision which way you go, but our instructors are what make us who we are. So.
Yeah, and I'm a little biased on this one, Alpha, but I would just add to the comment on EET. Really love that question. It is the instructors, hands down, to the face of School of PE, to everyone in the engineering community. But Chris Miller, who's at least for me in the upper left corner, he's also a big reason. Nobody else has a Chris Miller. No one has an Alpha C, and the student services team that he has built and supports our students, whether it's Christmas Eve or New Year's Day or Thanksgiving Day, with all the tryptophan running, our student services team is there 24/7, 365, and that just can't go unstated, Alpha.
And let's grab this
Absolutely.
other question, C3.
Yeah.
I know we're over time and we want to respect everyone's time, but we're here as long as anyone has questions, we'll stick around. So if you'll tackle
Sure. Yeah,
read that
absolutely.
question.
Absolutely. But again, I think if anyone needs to drop, please feel free. A lot of this you'll get in a summary email. So please, hopefully everyone had a really rich experience here. The last question in the Q&A is, if I just recently took the FE and passed, but hadn't really planned on taking it until after April, I think you mean not taking the PE till after April. Should I wait and take the course for the new change? So it sounds like they just passed the FE. They're considering taking the PE relatively quickly, but we're not thinking about taking it until after April. Should I wait and take the course after the change is the question.
Mohammed?
How many years from graduation? And did you decide on electing a depth? This is actually a very, I'm surprised we didn't talk about this previously, but how do you know which discipline to take? I think this is a question that comes up invariably when people are deciding. And maybe my hot take is that it should not be based, I know this is tangential to the question, but it should not be based very quickly on maybe your work role or function only. That's not the prevailing thing. The notion being is that the material that's presented on the exam will generally be a new experience for you, regardless of what your work function is. So you're learning it for some of the material you're learning for the first time. And so you want to give yourself an opportunity for affinity and comfort. And I think if you have those two things for that topic, then learning it is a byproduct of your diligence and the effort you put into it. So I'm a believer that you can study and learn new material. Obviously, it helps if you have an edge from academic background and things of that nature. So maybe back to the previous end of the initial question, when it's going to be dependent on that candidate experience. So how many years away from graduation? How is the FE for you? And do you have a depth to elect to take? And if not, are you deciding to kind of take it before the change? And if you do, we do have the alternative for the boot camp in the coming new year. We do have on demand. I would allocate a minimum of 2.5 to 3 months on average for most candidates. And that's every day, and then some more intensive stretches on the weekend. And you could do it through, self-study of on demand, but we will have a live course running early next year as well. So I welcome you to reach out, info at School of PE, and then we can take the conversation offline, and then we can give you some of that more tailored and strategic feedback of what to do or what the recommendations are and what you should reflect on.
Thanks, Mohammed. On that note, we're going to end. We're at 12:06. Sorry, 2:06 Eastern. I'm not in Eastern time zone, so I'm sorry. I'm having trouble with the math. We're going to end. Just wanted to again express our gratitude. We had over 100 people on this call. We're really thankful to the 50 or so folks that are still here, probably bleeding into their next meeting. So we're going to let everyone go. Again, you'll get a communication from School of PE that kind of summarizes the questions and the answers that were provided today, as well as just our general gratitude for everyone's participation. Thank you so much. Best of luck to everybody on this journey. Info at School of PE. We really mean it. Please reach out to us with further questions, and let's have those one-on-one conversations and help you find the right path to pass. Okay, everyone.
Thanks,
a
everybody.
great
Happy
day.
holidays.